Okay, guys, welcome back to our exploration of the golden age of Pericles, or the golden age of Athens. We're going to continue our exploration with different contributors. Okay, so if you remember when we last left off, that the golden age was a time of peace and prosperity that occurred in Athens, and a lot of technologies and ideas and inventions happened during this time. Okay, so today we're going to learn about all of the different people, all of the different contributors who came up with new, interesting, and innovative ideas that they shared with the rest of the world. We are going to learn about a lot of people, so I would recommend at the end of your notes that you write each person's name with their contribution. Here, I'll show you how that works right here. So you can see I've written Herodotus was the father of history. Phidias is a sculptor. You don't need to write those two down now, but I'll be checking at the end of your notes to make sure that you can easily identify each person with what they did. All right, let's get started. So for drama, okay, drama is acting and writing plays. There were two types of drama that the ancient Greeks kind of perfected. The first was a tragedy. You'll notice here the sad face for tragedy, okay? These were serious plays. People will always die in the tragedies, and they usually involve love and hate. The second type is comedy. These were humorous. These are funny plays, like this guy right here. They made fun of respected people and traditions. Two people wrote tragedies. Their names are Aeschylus and Sophocles. To watch these plays being performed, the Greeks built huge outdoor theaters that looked like this. It kind of looks like a concert venue that you would see today. These are called amphitheaters. It's really easy to remember because when you watch a movie or a play, you go to the theater or the movie theater. It has the word right inside. Moving on to a different type of writing, the ancient Greeks also had a very famous poet, and his name was Homer. Now, when I think of poetry, I think of short little stories that rhyme and that are not very long. Homer's famous stories or poems were called epic poems, and they were very long, and they were about heroes. So you must know that Homer wrote poetry, and in particular, he wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey. Students at Stonewall read these books. People all over the world read these books. I had to read this book when I was in 9th grade. Okay? People still read them. They're amazing stories. They're very long, but people still like them, and they taught a lot about Greece. Moving on to math. You might have learned this in geometry class, the Pythagorean theorem, right? A squared plus b squared equals c squared. This comes from ancient Greece. If you're looking to get into engineering or construction or woodworking, you would use this every single day. Just as a side note, you'll see different people called the father of numbers or the father of history or the father of philosophy. What that means is that they were the first person to really do that thing. Okay? Euclid was the father of geometry. So if you love geometry class, you can thank this guy. If you hate geometry class, you can thank this guy. Hippocrates. I know that looks like it says Hippocrates. That's not right. Hippocrates. He is called the father of medicine. He was the first person to realize that diseases could be categorized so that the flu is different than you getting your leg cut open, or that measles and the chicken pox are kind of the same thing. And he also realized that doctors and people of medicine have a special skill that not everyone has, and they have a duty or an obligation to help those that are injured. Doctors today still take what we call the Hippocratic Oath. That's basically saying from Hippocrates that we possess a special skill, and that if somebody is injured, hurt, or dying, that we have to help them. Okay? For the very first time, history is being written down. This guy named Herodotus, he is called the father of history. An easy way to remember his name and what he did is there is an H at the beginning of Herodotus, and that stands for history. Herodotus, history. And he writes about the Persian Wars. Now, we don't actually know a whole bunch about him because even though he was busy writing about everything else, he didn't really write about himself. So I know you all love this class, and you can thank Herodotus for that. All right, let's get into philosophy. Okay? Philosophers were people that asked really deep questions. Okay? They love wisdom and knowledge and asking questions that make people think. Okay? We're going to learn about 3 philosophers, and it is very important that you keep in mind the correct order of the philosophers. Okay? I will show you how to do that at the very end. Like I said, we're going to learn about 3 philosophers. The first one is Socrates. Socrates had a lot of new ideas, but not everybody liked his ideas because he's asking questions like, do we exist? How do we know we exist? How can we prove that God exists? Can we prove that God doesn't exist? Things like that really upset a lot of people. Okay? You might have heard of something called the Socratic method. That's basically answering questions with other questions. Okay? We'll talk about that in class. Don't get too worried about that. Okay? This is a very famous painting of Socrates. Of the day he had to commit suicide. Okay? So these are all of his students around him. And he was put on trial. And the judge said, you need to be put to death. So he drinks this hemlock and he dies. Okay? But you can see he's always questioning. We'll talk about this when we come together in class. Plato was a student of Socrates. He wrote the Republic, and the Republic was about politics. Okay? The most important things to know is that Plato wrote the Republic and that he was a student of Socrates. Aristotle was the student of Plato. So it goes Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. Okay? And he opens a public school. And he's also going to come back because he tutors, or he was the teacher of somebody very famous that we're going to learn about at the end of Greece. Let's look into art. Beautiful, graceful, strong, perfect bodies. Am I describing Greek art or am I describing myself? I don't know. Phidias made Greek sculpture. Okay? And when he made these sculptures, he made them very big and with very human features. They loved to sculpt the human body. Okay, look at all of that detail. You can see his ankle bone. You can see his ribs. You can see his muscles. Okay, you can even see what's going on back here. Look at the detail. These are carved out of solid pieces of marble. Okay, it looks like he's draped in cloth. That is actually stone. Like we've talked about before, Athens is the most beautiful, educated city in the world during this time. Don't forget, this is the Parthenon, sitting on top of the Acropolis, things we learned about last time. Okay, now test yourself. Hippocrates made important contributions in the area of poetry, sculpture, philosophy, or medicine. If you said medicine, you are correct. All right, so these should be all of your people that you should write down. Okay. Oh no, Sparta's going to attack Athens. We'll learn about that when we get to the Peloponnesian War. Now, before we stop, I want to show you real quickly how to remember the order of the philosophers. This is how I want you to remember the order of our three philosophers: Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and later Alexander the Great. It spells SPA. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. So you might get a question, who was the teacher of Aristotle? And if you can remember this order, you'll know that it is Plato. I might ask you, who is the father of philosophy? And as we said before, if they are the father, they did it first. So which one of these was the father of philosophy? If you're thinking Socrates, that's absolutely correct.